Okay, good morning, everybody, and welcome to the Water Rates Committee for today, August 3rd, 2021. I'm Chip Close, Water Operations Manager, and I'm here with Aurora Tipton, our Customer Service Administrator. And to set the table a little bit for you all, today we are here to discuss the fee schedules that were not discussed at the June 3rd, 2021 meeting, and we'll walk everybody through those.
Yeah, you probably should.
Did I not do
There
something?
you go.
I didn't do, just yell at me.
I know,
I was
super
talking.
talking.
There we go. Okay, so, and we have Jennifer on there as well.
I am here, but I am going to mute myself because I'm starting to get a cough. So I'll be here listening. I don't bother everybody.
All right, thank you. So to set the table for you all, a little bit of background, the Water Rate Committee reviews and sets the rates generally through the Proposition 218 process at regular intervals. However, the district has many rates that are not set through the Prop 218 process. They are our schedule of fees for services we provide. Per the committee request, this committee has asked staff to go through all that schedule of fees and adjust them so that we are gathering actual costs.
If I can interrupt for a second, I assume that the fees are, jeez. I assume that they're exempt from the 218 process by statute?
They are, correct. Because it's, most of the things that are in the fee schedule are services that customers are voluntarily asking us to pay for.
Good.
So, we did go through the first round of analysis at the June 3rd rate committee meeting. The objective for this meeting is to cover the remainder. Ultimately, staff will be working towards a fully updated schedule of fees that documents the rate setting process and establishes a clear procedure for annual increases, basically CPI increases, and then we recommend every 5 years we go through and do a wholesale review, just like what we're doing today. In the last go-around, you may remember we had a couple of items that were a little bit challenging, and we were tasked to go back and review those. One of them was the fee for rotations, and the other one was the fee for intermittent flow accounts. So we'll be coming back to this committee with those two cleanup items, and then any other items in today's discussion that may need further review, we'll bring those back as well. We'll clean those up, and then ultimately take this whole package to before the board. Okay.
Chip, I do have a question. Can you, in a few sentences perhaps, summarize where we left off on this meeting in June? Because I brought my packet from June and my notes, and I just can't tell what we did.
Yeah, so.
How about you?
It's very confusing because there's so many darn fees and rates.
There are, and so I wanted to go, well, what did we decide, or did we
Yeah.
decide anything? I can't tell.
Great question. So
Thank you.
the staff report, if you look at the staff report, the first page at the bottom has 4A, and it has some details on what 4A is. If you turn the page and scroll down, you'll see some of the other ones that are listed here. It says right underneath the bold type, this item was reviewed at the May Water Rates Committee.
Yeah, I see, I read all that, but I don't remember what we did. Because, there were all these, this item was reviewed, and it's like, well, okay, we reviewed it, but what action was it?
Okay, very, very good. So we'll come back with a completed document, and I think what we would like to do is provide you with all of the determinations that we've made in one packet, and here's the old.
Oh, that would be ideal.
Once we get this all done, we'll bring both to you, and you can see the changes all side by side.
Right, okay.
That was my question too. This is not a red line version, so we don't know which.
No,
Yeah, it's like,
These were all updated. That's what I'm.
you're gonna see that Aurora did a large amount of digging and
Thank you.
data analysis, and to redline it would just be very hard to track. So our goal is to get this all cleaned up, all buttoned up. We'll give you, here's today's rates, here's what we're proposing in a package, and you can compare the two page by page.
awesome, okay,
Okay,
thank you.
okay, so, any other questions before we jump on into the?
No, I think we can go now. Now that I know that I get to have another look at it all.
Crack at it, yeah.
Yeah, it's just like, boy, I just couldn't remember a doggone thing.
Yeah, and it's a lot to take in, and the amount of data and analysis that's done for each of these is very detailed and very impressive, and I thank Aurora for her efforts. But with that, I get to turn it over to her to walk us through this.
Awesome.
Good morning.
Good morning.
So I will start by saying that I would consider this half the more complex half.
Yeah.
So we have a lot of work to go through this morning.
Hi, Greg.
Good morning.
Welcome back.
Good morning. I'm just here for the complex piece.
Okay.
So I'll dive right in. We'll start with Schedule 4A, which are meter installations.
Uh-huh.
The most complicated one that we have, and I will say that right up front, as I was reviewing this with fresh eyes again last night, going over all my notes, I found an error. So, if we can start by turning to page 8, which should say that there are 4 types of meter installation.
Mm-hmm.
There is a tap, where we have to tap the main line, and we're installing a single domestic meter.
Mm-hmm.
There's a tap where we're installing a single domestic meter and a fire service meter for the residents' fire sprinklers. There's a drop-in. At this point, there's 1 drop-in rate. We're proposing that we split that to 2 drop-in rates because with the addition of fire service meters, that work has become a little bit more complex.
That makes sense.
So when you look at the very first schedule, meter install tap, single domestic service,
Mm-hmm.
Right?
on page 8.
Page 8, I'm on page 8 of the packet.
Page 8 of the packet. Yep, that's,
It was 8?
I'm sorry, right there.
Right there.
Right there, yeah.
Where?
On the bottom right.
Yeah, do you want to point it?
You're on it.
Okay.
You're fine.
Okay, so as you can see, Chris, if you'll scroll up just a little bit so we can see the labor portion. I've allocated 9 hours to this work.
Mm-hmm.
When this work is done, there is a second component, and that is a service lateral install, and we break that out as a separate cost. The 9 hours is the combination of those. It takes 2 hours to do the service lateral work. It takes 7 hours to do the tap work.
Mhm.
So this should be adjusted down to 7 hours for both labor and equipment. It brings the cost down a fair amount. As you can see, the calculated cost for a 5/8" meter tap on what you have is $9,318.50, which is a 72% increase.
No, wait, I'm not seeing the 9,000. Where's?
It's at the bottom of the page, highlighted.
Oh, there it is, there it is. Okay, thank you.
And I will back up and we'll walk through this a little bit more. I
Okay.
just want to explain this change that you'll see when we come back with some revisions. So when I bring that down to 7 hours for labor and equipment, it actually brings the calculated cost to $7,562.60, which is only a 39% increase. So I just wanted to cover that right up front, that this is a little bit higher than I believe it should be.
So this will be one of the items that we bring back with the cleanups, with the ones that stand out is we had challenges and cleanups to do. So we now have intermittent flow rotations and a cleanup of this one.
So that I'm clear though, the 39 or 72% increase, is that from, is that over like this period of 5 years? Like, in other words, we haven't done this in a long time, right? So,
Type of work or this review?
this review,
It was done approximately 5 years ago.
right. So is it true or is it correct to say that if the increases, we'll pick 40%, that equals, you know, whatever it is, 8% per year over 5 years?
If that's the way the board chose to do it, the proposal would be to make these effective in 2022.
No, I know, but what I'm saying is I'm looking back.
Oh,
I'm saying we haven't adjusted the rates in 5 years. So this is an equivalent to an 8% per year. Is that true? Is it?
essentially, but we have done a CPI increase each year.
And what CPI have we attributed to these?
I'm sorry, I don't have that in front
Okay.
of me. It varies by year. I believe it's been less than 3% each year.
So
And-
part of the change and the marked increase is because we did a finer analysis on what it takes to put one of these in,
Sure.
and
Good.
found some more details on the amount of labor and the amount of materials we're actually using, and found that some of our old analyses didn't cover everything. Our goal is to be as transparent and
Right.
honest as we can, and so it added a little bit more to an install cost, because we weren't tracking everything 100%.
Okay, so then, is it true that, let's say the board approves this particular increase, that is then the cost for the next 5 years?
No, so it would be the cost in 2022, and in 2023, we would adjust it for
For
CPI,
CPI?
or we would adjust for CPI.
Okay.
Our goal is that hopefully every year it just stays on track. We don't have to do these major adjustments anymore.
Right.
But every 5 years, we'll go back, check, and see, are we veering off course or not? Are we still on? If we're on course, great, we'll continue to just do CPI.
Yeah.
That makes sense, so that's a change, the proposed to do just like we're doing. You know, Jennifer said that, told me that generally speaking, costs go up 6% a year
Yeah.
on sort of a broad brush, right?
Mhm.
Not everything does.
Labor and materials.
Labor and
all of it.
materials.
Insurance.
Yes.
Mhm.
So that really makes sense to make that automatic, with those numbers that we're using for CPI or COLAs or whatever.
Yeah. And I'll add to that, there were some of these fee schedules in the past that did not escalate with CPI. So that's.
Right, I know, that's why.
We're trying to keep current and stay current, so.
Chip, can I ask this question? Is it that every 5 years when we go back and do a review of these, it takes such a heavy lift to do a review when we wouldn't necessarily do it on every given particular year? CPI is to help keep track with some of that, but then every 5 years or so, we go back and do a heavy lift that Aurora has been doing now.
Yeah.
And then we kind of re-up it, and we, lull for 5 years, CPI does
And
its
then
trick.
rely on
And then
CPI.
then we just recalibrate.
And if I may, the part of the goal with this was to build the framework for how that 5-year review happens. So, in theory, in 5 years, someone can come in and say, yes, we're still using the same crews, we're still using the same equipment, input current costs for those, and boom, it updates. So that it's not a
Nice.
full-scale rebuild
Mhm.
that's happened this.
Mhm. Well, that's really great, and, you have to get down in the weeds. Look at my colleague there. Sometimes you do have to get in the weeds to rebuild,
Right.
to start up, so that's great. So the costs in yellow then are staff's recommended increases. Is that correct?
Correct, but again, when we come back for our third
Sure,
review of this, you'll see an adjustment in that.
okay.
And the increase will range from 32 to 39% as opposed to 60 to 72%.
Oh, okay. Yeah, and in my head, it's like, well, that's about 8% a year, it's like, it's not, oh my God, we're killing everyone with a 40% increase.
Huge one lump sum.
Yeah.
I mean, you can
have
spread
to-
it out over.
Yeah, you
over
have to
the
say,
years.
yeah, and it's, unfortunately, it's all gonna be paid for in 1 year, but it really represents how the costs have increased over the last 5 years.
Right.
Okay. All right, thank you.
So page 9 is the domestic and fire service install. It very much mirrors the page 8. Just with the addition of a few additional materials. So here we need a second meter. It would be the domestic meter, which is typically a 5/8 inch or a 3/4 inch, plus a 1 inch meter for the fire sprinkler. We need 2 endpoints. The endpoints are the device that sends the readings to us each month. And then a few other miscellaneous materials. So, very similar. These are typically, again, either a 5/8 inch meter or a 3/4 inch meter, and then both with a 1 inch fire service meter.
Okay,
These also would be adjusted down to 7 hours for labor and materials, which makes it a 37% increase over the 2021 fees. Next, in addition to those fees that we just saw, there would be a service lateral install.
This is page 10.
This is page 10. The service lateral install is 2-part work. So initially, on the first day, they're going to do the installation. They're going to put a temporary asphalt patch there and then come back later in the year, which is why you see all of the crew twice. So,
makes sense.
you're taking them out to that site twice, once to do the initial work and then once to do the asphalt restoration. We did this, we calculated it at a 40-foot service line, and then broke it down to a cost per foot. which comes out to $108, which is per foot, which is a 60.24% increase over the current cost. On average, I looked this morning, service lines range anywhere from 3 feet to 80 feet. Most common is about 22 feet.
Mm-hmm.
So this again would be an additional cost to that tap cost.
To the tap cost. And these costs that we're going over now, by and large, happen for new services, is that right?
Correct.
New services. So if you're an existing customer, much of this may not apply to you. Is that true?
If you're an existing water, already receiving water,
Yeah,
existing customer receiving water, right, you've already paid these, you already have your.
that's what I thought, okay.
This would be for a customer who most often is on standby. They have a main in front of their property, and they come to the district and say, I'm ready for water service.
Okay. Do we know, how these fees that you guys are looking at and recommending, how those compare with other water districts? You know, are we like way above or at market, or do we have any idea?
We can look at some of that and bring you some of that.
I think that would be good for the full board, because it's like, well, compared to what? You know, are we way less, are we way over?
I think we're gonna find we're fairly close, but
Uh-huh.
without looking at every single one, I can't say for certain. We
Well, I
can
don't-
bring some analysis back.
Yeah, I don't know that you need to look at every single one, but kind of in general, to get a flavor of where we are.
We'll look at our closest neighbors like UCWA, see where they're at. And, but keep in mind, we're trying to capture our actual cost.
Understood,
Yeah.
yeah, I
But
understood.
it's always good to see where we are in the grand scheme of things.
Well, I mean, it will tell us something, you know, about our actual cost. Either we're doing it more efficiently, or it's cost us more for whatever reason, and it's a data point.
Or others may not be charging actual
Or
cost.
others may not be charging it. I mean, but I mean, I'm just saying it would be a good data point to have. Okay.
I have a question. A service lateral is, I assume, crossing a street to get it over to the property line or something like that?
Correct, so this is from the main to where the meter box will sit normally on the customer's property.
Where the meter box was, okay, all right. Because I was thinking service lateral, I mean, goes to the house. I go, no, you don't go to the house, you go from the meter, you go to the meter. Okay,
So on occasion, it's going across the full street,
so like mine was just straight up out of the ground, because the pipe was 3 feet in the ground.
that could be.
Okay.
The next type of install is a simple drop-in. This is where the service lateral already exists. There's already a box in the ground. We are literally just going out and placing a meter.
Mhm.
Usually these happen when there's already a service lateral, it was part of a development or a water line extension project, and they install those as part of that project.
Mhm.
So we just go out, we drop the meters. It takes a couple of utility workers about an hour to do that work, and then just a meter and an endpoint, and a truck to get out there.
Mhm.
So these fees actually would go down. You'll see for a 5/8" meter, which is our most common residential install, it would go down to $445.16, which is a 53% decrease compared to 2020.
Wow, we don't see decreases too often, do we?
No, we don't. But again, that's to be reflective of actual cost.
Absolutely.
Right, okay.
The next page is the schedule that we're proposing to add, or the line item that we're proposing to add. This is a complex drop-in. So again, when we have a development or we do a water line extension, often the service laterals and the meter boxes are set with construction. In the past, there wasn't a requirement of a fire service. Now that the county requires fire sprinklers, customers often need 2 meters to meet that requirement. That means there's a little bit more work to do in the box. They often have to do an outage, and then what they call split the yoke. So they have to install some additional parts and pieces, and forgive me, I don't do this work, so I'm doing my best to explain it. But with that, there's some additional cost. So this complex drop-in would actually go up. You would be installing either a 5/8" meter or a 3/4" meter with the fire service meter, and it would go up to about right around $2,000, a 28 or 29% increase, depending on what size meter you're installing for your domestic service.
So I have a question about that. I'm a little off topic, but refresh my memory, the purpose of a fire meter was to have a bigger volume for the fire service.
Yeah,
Has there been any study on, just putting in one big meter, and what's up with that?
That's a great conversation we'd like to bring up at some point.
Okay.
But not for
Set it
today.
aside, I'll set that aside,
Yeah,
okay.
there was a reason we did that in the past, and we were concerned that using one large meter for very small usage would, affect accuracy.
Oh, okay.
And so by putting in a 5/8 inch meter, you maintain your accuracy, but putting in the 3/4 inch with it gives you the flow for fire service.
So I'm just doing over, let's say, 40 years, which would be the most cost-effective way to go, right?
I think most other agencies just put in a 3/4 inch
Do they?
meter as standard,
Okay.
and that's, you move on.
So we'd have to do it'd take some research over time.
Research and adjustment of our rules and regs,
Yeah.
and,
So that was a district policy?
yes.
Okay. Thank you. That was a fun idea.
And to be clear, the district does not require a second meter, that is at customer request. So
I thought the county required,
the county requires fire sprinklers.
yeah.
How the customer gets to that is
Okay.
the county and the customer.
Yeah,
Got
if
it.
they're an existing home and just now tapping into our main, but not doing any work on the house, there's a high likelihood they wouldn't do it fire sprinklers.
I see, yeah.
They're not doing anything to the home.
And even on occasion on some new builds, some customers have been able to meet their fire flow requirements with just a 5/8 inch meter. So that's something that their fire sprinkler designer,
Probably depends on the size of the house for that, right? How many
Okay.
sprinklers you got, and all that kind of stuff.
And the pressure at the.
Pressure, yeah.
I do want to back up just a little bit. If you look at the current rate schedule, which you can see on page 6 and 7, it does list capacity fees. I bring this up only because I don't want to just ignore that. Capacity fees are set by the capacity fee study, so we're not discussing that portion today. But that is an addition to the installation cost,
Okay.
okay? So if there are no other questions about installations, we'll move to Schedule 4B.
And what page are we?
4B starts on, you'll see the current rate schedule on page 18.
Okay,
So you have a couple of items here. The first is meter testing. This is meter testing that's done at the customer's request. Right now, we charge $30 to test a 5/8 inch or 3/4 inch meter. In reality, this takes 2 customer service technicians to go out there, and it takes them about an hour to do this work. The calculated rate comes out to $196.94. Staff's recommendation would be to essentially split that cost with the customer as part of our water efficiency program. Charge the customer $98, and the district would cover the rest of the cost. Meter testing is recommended by AWWA. That is a consideration in our annual water audit. So it's reasonable to say that the district would cover some of that cost. And if in the event that we went out and tested a meter and we found that the meter was faulty, we then credit the customer's account the cost of the test.
So I like that whole idea. I think that
that seems fair.
seems fair, yeah.
Next is treated water service abandonment. This usually goes hand in hand with a meter relocation. So a customer may have the meter on their parcel, for one reason or another, they decided that they need that meter to be moved. So they would normally pay the install cost for their new meter, but we also have to deal with their old meter location. And so, unfortunately, in the past, we've charged $402.70 to do that abandonment. However, in speaking with maintenance, the work is much the same as doing a tap. We have to dig up the road again in order to cut and cap that service lateral. So it does become a full day's work again. So the calculated cost comes out to $6,507.08.
And that's to abandon, discontinue, dig up, and remove
Correct,
meter.
correct.
Okay.
So they would They would remove the old box, the old meter, backfill that space,
Mm-hmm.
and then also terminate the existing, service lateral.
Mm-hmm.
This one should go down to 7 hours as well. So we will bring this one back with an adjustment.
Oh, because the number of hours are gonna be.
Yeah.
Okay.
There is no service lateral installed, so we will come back with an adjustment. So this will go down a little bit, but, again,
Okay.
unfortunately, it's a very costly endeavor to relocate a meter or to abandon a meter.
Do people then just go, well, why do I care about that? Why don't I just like leave it there?
Walk away from it.
That is another option for people, rather than going down this road.
It
I don't
is,
know why anybody would ever do that, to pay all this money to.
Yeah, I mean, some folks are bothered by the fact that their meter's in their neighbor's yard.
Oh, well, then there's that,
Their yard,
yeah.
then it's hard to get to your meter, and so they call us and say, okay, what does it take to put the meter back in my own yard?
Got it.
Then they find out the fees, and sometimes they move forward.
Okay.
any other questions about this one?
No.
Okay, so on page 20, we'll look at Schedule 8A, public fire hydrants on treated water systems. Again, this is one that we don't get a lot of requests for, but on occasion, someone will contact the district, they don't have a fire hydrant near their home, and they'll ask about having one installed. So there are a number of considerations, but assuming that it was a location that the district agreed a hydrant would be appropriately placed. Right now, when a meter is installed on an existing main, we're charging $9,777, and including 10 feet of service lateral. The proposal would be to break this up and charge for the hydrant installation and then a separate charge per foot of service lateral to mirror how we're handling meter installation.
Mhm.
The cost here is a little bit more expensive because it's a larger lateral. So the calculated cost per foot is $110.80, the service lateral to the hydrant. And then on page 22, you can see the hydrant installation. And this one will need an adjustment as well, to 7 hours. I apologize. Goes up to right around $14,000.
Okay, so let me, just for my own head, clarify. So if this is, you know, a development, much like, let's just use Loma Rica, for example, and we're putting in, or somebody's putting in fire hydrants every 1,000 feet, whatever the requirement is. These then are the costs. No, this is to put in a new one on an existing.
That's correct. So the second part of this would be that we would be proposing to remove the line item. You'll see on the existing schedule that it's concurrently with new construction.
Yes.
The district doesn't extend water lines, that's usually done by a developer or a private contractor, and that cost is included. So we would be proposing to remove that line item. It's not applicable to current practice.
Mm-hmm.
We would also be proposing to remove the hydrant removal and discontinuation of service. We can't come up with a scenario where that would happen, or that it has happened in recent years. And the salvage credit, we would also be proposing to remove. The district doesn't receive credit, we can't.
Right,
use the
you can't do it in,
hydrant, so
right.
It's really not applicable.
It's, yeah, it's sort of like,
So this schedule would only happen when there's an existing main and the customer says, hey, I don't have a hydrant near my home, on my block, whatever it may be. In the past, I think there were times when hydrants weren't always installed.
how many would that be? I can't imagine there's, because when we install those water lines, they're every 1,000 feet, which is the code, right?
Yes, but back in the day, didn't always have that code, and there are sections of old mains that do not have hydrants.
Really? Oh, okay.
We're very fortunate, though, in the last, 10, 15 years, we've been going back and installing them. So I think there's very few locations that don't meet that spacing anymore.
Does the amount of flow or amount of head have to do with, is it impacted by how many hydrants you have along the way?
No, really, it's all about spacing as far as the fire departments are concerned, and that's who we work with to say, hey, where's your biggest need, and we try to address their needs.
This is, again, a little off topic, but yesterday during the Brunswick, Idaho, Maryland fire, one of the things that I heard, I don't know if it was true, but they were having problems with fire flow. Did you guys hear that?
I saw that in one of the comments somewhere, but they never reached out to us.
They didn't,
No.
okay.
And there are 2 different pressure zones out there, and I
Uh-huh.
think it kind of depends on which hydrant they tie to and where.
Uh-huh.
But we'll be glad to discuss that with the fire department if they,
Well, if they didn't reach out to you, maybe that was just somebody saying something.
Yeah.
It wasn't necessarily backed up with fact.
They had a kink in their hose.
They had a kink in their hose. Oh, gosh. Okay, thank you.
That was inappropriate.
You're the fire guy. You can say those things.
Oh, yeah, I've had kinks in my hose.
Okay.
Any other questions about this one? All right, so the next schedule is on page 26. The schedule 8C and 8D. These are private fire service monthly charges. So the very first one is the 1-inch private fire service. These are typically the residential fire services that we were looking at install costs for earlier.
Mm-hmm. When you say private as opposed to public, what does that mean?
So in this case, it's the residential fire sprinklers.
Oh, okay, got it, all right. It's the sprinklers versus the hydrants. Okay.
Minimal costs associated with this. So when I looked at this, I looked at it over a 10-year period
Mm-hmm.
to try to determine what costs are we recovering with this monthly fee. Basically, we're likely going to have to replace the meter and or the endpoint over 10 years. We also are paying data charges each month for the meter reading, for the endpoint to transmit to us each month. So I figured that cost in. And so you come up with, over 10 years, a maintenance cost of about $431. When you break that down per month, it comes out to $3.60. It's a 3% increase
Mm-hmm.
as compared to the 2021 rate.
So the monthly charges are not us going and inspecting it. The monthly charges are simply to maintain the meter and the data that comes off of it.
Correct. To maintain the meter, maintain the endpoint, and then we're
Okay,
reading
great.
each month.
Thank you.
And as we switch to Badger, that's an automated process.
Mm-hmm.
Most of the time.
Okay.
Next are the, on page 28, the 4, 6, and 8-inch detector checks. These are the larger commercial fire services. They often serve a commercial center or a commercial building. So these are a little bit more complex. Our cross-connection team goes out annually. They inspect these and renew them, clean them, and test them. They spend about 2 hours at each device each year. We also have to figure in the cost of what we call a 5/8-inch tattletale meter. That tells us if the fire service is being used, as well as an endpoint to read these.
Mm-hmm.
And then over 10 years, there would be some rehab done on these devices. So they might change out the checks, the release valves, some of the rubber parts that are contained in these, and that's to keep them clean, in good, clean working condition. So over 10 years, for a 4-inch detector check, it comes out to a cost of a little over $4,300. A 6-inch is $4,600, and an 8-inch $5,200. And then you can see the highlighted portion is that calculated monthly rate. So
The
when we
monthly.
spread that cost out over 120 months, it comes out to just under $36 up to $44. This is about an 80% increase to the current rate.
Mm-hmm. Then are these charges, I'm a commercial property owner, and are these charges then added to the bill? Like, we have one meter and we have a bunch of people being served off one meter. So we would have whatever our meter size is, I don't know, but then this would be, in this case, you know, say if it's a 6-inch detector, we'd pay whatever the consumptive rate is, the base rate, plus the $38 each month. Is that how that would go?
Essentially, it's a secondary bill, it's a completely separate bill and account.
Oh, okay.
But yes, it would be an additional charge in addition to any, commercial service that they had.
Now, why wouldn't that charge be added into the regular bill?
We separate them, for water use reporting requirements. So, in theory, no water is going through these. On occasion, they do.
Mhm.
So we would want to be able to isolate that water usage as opposed to have it all combined, as we're reporting to the state. For example, for our monthly, residential usage. We've looked at putting it all on one bill. It's that water use component that we're just not sure how to.
I have another idea about this, but I will save that for later. The fire service thing, okay? Just came to mind.
On page 29 is a 2 up to 10-inch double detector check. Chip, maybe you could help explain the difference between a detector check and a double detector check?
Yes, that would be good.
Put me on the spot. No. So a detector check usually is a single check, and it provides the fire service to a facility that doesn't have any hazardous chemicals or things like that at it. A double detector check is one of those locations where there indeed is a hazard in the facility, that if there's any backflow that could occur back into our system, we need extra protection, and that's where these more substantial devices come into play.
Okay. What about systems that are not water, they're dry systems?
That's another example of when you would use these more protective backflow devices.
Okay.
In fact, that's required by AWWA and state law.
Oh, all right. Good to know.
So because these are larger, more complex devices, the cost is a little bit more substantial. It requires about 2 hours with 2 technicians to do the annual inspection, renewal, cleaning, and testing. So that cost goes up a little bit from $54 up to $78, depending on the size of the device, per month. Again, this is an increase of anywhere from 31% up to 131% in the monthly charges to the customer.
Wow. And this is on top of what we just talked about?
No, this would be instead of, they would.
Oh,
have one
instead of,
together.
okay, you'd have
Yeah.
all together, thank you, okay.
You know, the other weird thing about this particular scenario is that most water agencies, that you brought up, do we compare these to other agencies? Most other agencies force folks to have private companies do this for them. So it'll be hard to get an analysis on a cost comparison.
Sure.
One of the few agencies that does this in-house. But I hope and I think that we probably keep our rates low based on that, but we'll see if we can dig it.
All right, the next schedule that we'll look at is Schedule 9B. These are backflow prevention devices. Starting on page 30, you'll see the current rate schedule. On page 31, these are installation charges, I'm sorry. So the first one that we'll look at are the installation charges for a double check valve. That's the minimum backflow requirement. You'll see on the current schedule, it shows installation charges for any device from 3/4 inch up to 8 inches. The first thing that we're proposing is to eliminate the 1.5 up to 8 inch installation charges. At this time, rules and regulations require that commercial services have the higher level of protection with an RP device. Typically, a residential service, although it may require backflow, wouldn't have larger than a 3/4 inch meter.
Right.
Maybe a 1 inch meter for their fire service, if they have a fire service. So those are no longer relevant to today's practice. So we would eliminate the 1.5 through 8 inch, portion of the schedule. These are also inspected and tested annually,
By NIV staff?
by NID staff, by a cross-connection control technician. Again, looking at this over, these are our annual cost. And these actually go down. It takes them about 2 hours per device, plus a service truck, and then the installation materials. And then the calculated cost for a 3/4 inch device is $480.77. I should say that if a customer has a 5/8 inch meter and needs a double check valve, they have a 3/4 inch double check valve installed. So that's why you're only seeing 2 device sizes here, 3/4 inch or 1 inch.
Okay.
This again is one where the cost goes down. It's a fairly simple installation, so we would see these fees go down 34 to 36%. Next is the RP installation. On this one, on the current schedule, we have installation costs for anything from a 3/4 inch to an 8 inch again. We would be proposing to remove the installation costs for 3 inch and up. Those would typically be done by a developer or a contractor. It's a rather large footprint, so that's not work that we would do in-house on a new installation. If there was a new requirement, the proposal would be to do that work, a new requirement on an existing service. So if there's a change of use of the property that now requires them to have an RP device, we would propose that work for a 3 inch or larger device be done on a time and materials basis. These devices have a very large footprint, and because we could potentially be just dealing with curb and gutter, pavement, it just makes more sense to do that work on time and materials, if the need were there. However, for the 3/4 inch through 2 inch devices, again, installation, it takes about 4 hours to do this work, plus service truck and materials. These rates go up in 2 cases. For the smallest device, 12%, for a 1 inch device, 11%, but for the largest device, the 2 inch, it actually goes down, 23%. So the cost for installation would range from just under $1,400 up to just under $2,260.
Okay.
On that one.
Other than I'm looking at the supporting documentation, find one of these, and thanking you, first of all, and just really understanding how complicated this was. Was your spreadsheet like this long?
Pretty large.
With multiple pages?
These are all my notes here.
Yeah, I'll bet.
It's like 9 hours versus 7 hours after I looked at these.
Yeah, but that's really good work.
Thank you.
It's really good work.
Sure. Next, we're gonna jump to page 45. There. So these are the monthly fees for the backflow prevention devices. This fee covers the cost of annual inspection and maintenance, and I think I said that on installation, but I was confused about which schedule I was looking at, I apologize. So, monthly fees for backflow prevention device. Each year, they're going to go out, they're going to test and do any renewal that's necessary. So we figured in repair kits for each of these devices. Again, figured this over a 10-year period and then divided it over 120 months. The rates go up a bit. So for the smallest device, which is fairly common for a residential service, it would go from $7.60 to $11.74, which is a 55% increase. And then you can continue to see that increase through the 2 inch device. When you get up to the 3 inch device, we actually see a decrease in the monthly charges for that. Overall, regardless of the size of device, the technicians tell me that it takes them the same amount of time to install.
I would imagine, yeah, that makes sense.
So it's just a materials difference. And the materials difference isn't so substantial that we have the large increase that we were seeing in our current rate. Which is why those larger devices go down in cost. On page 47, so we were looking at double check valves. On page 47, you see the monthly charges for RP devices. Same thing here. 3/4 inch device through a 3-inch device. They're inspecting and testing annually, and then doing some repair over 10 years. These costs go up. Currently for a 3/4 inch RP device, it's $8.70 per month. It would go up to $15.05, which is a 73% increase, up to a 107% increase for the 3-inch device.
Mhm.
On page 48, we see the 4 through 8-inch devices. These are a little bit more complex and therefore take a little bit more time each year to test and renew. So we've got 2 hours for each technician. I'm sorry, we've got 2 technicians with 1 hour each. And that's because there's confined space requirements on these. They have to go into a vault to test those, so they have to have 2 people present to do that. So these costs go up 25 to 55%. per month. And the last one, can't believe we're already there, is the penalties for unauthorized water, taking of water. This is different than the resolution that the board discussed the other day.
This is different, did you say?
It is, because that was specifically related to drought, correct?
That's correct.
Oh, okay.
Currently, in our fee schedule, we have a first offense at $250 and a second offense at $500. The proposal would be to match the legislation in Senate Bill number 427. And we would actually break these up. So penalties for water theft committed via meter tampering, the first violation would be $130. The second violation would be $700, and the third violation would be $1,300. All other forms of water theft, so this would be from a hydrant,
From a ditch?
from a ditch, yes, would be $1,000, $2,000, and $3,000.
So what was the difference? Tampering,
Tampering with the meter versus
oh,
So,
tampering with a meter.
another
Okay.
method.
as I read the legislation, I think the intent was that if it's going through a meter, we still have a way to bill for that water use,
Okay.
usually for health and safety reasons.
Mm-hmm.
They did break that up, so we would just be matching that legislation.
So back to the drought thing, we have special dispensation in a drought to have bigger fines?
Yes, because of the emergency nature and the conservation program we've established, we can establish our own fines and rates. But, once the drought is over, we have to fall back to something and. it
Go
will
back to this.
Be what is now legislated by.
Yeah, okay.
the state.
By the state, that's good.
That's, takes the monkey off our back, doesn't it?
Yeah, yeah.
Hey, the state said so.
That's the last one that I
That
have
was it.
today, so.
Wow.
We do have to come back with a few revisions in the third,
So, having said that, would this committee prefer us to come back with those 3, maybe 4 items now that we'll clean up? We'll highlight them, but at the next round, I'm thinking maybe it's best for us to give you the full packet with here's today's, here's the proposed, and then we'll have in an addendum the backup for the ones we're cleaning up.
To clean it up. That'd be fine.
I think so,
Yeah?
yeah. We need another whole meeting just to do that.
Yeah, I just want to button it up, clean it up before we take it to the board, and go through one more round of
Perfect.
questions as a complete document. We'll go from there.
Very good.
Is there any way to quantify, you know, like, what is the total amount of, you know, we have X number of requests and this kind of work in a given year, and then we're getting this kind of increase, and what does that do to the bottom line? Is that too complicated?
turn that one over to Marvin, right?
Yeah, for maybe a meter install, is that what you're?
Well, you know, there's a couple things. I can hear the public go, oh my gosh, NIE raises, 30% and 120% and blah, blah, blah. And my guess is that everything that we just went over here today, when you multiply it times the number of times that we actually perform that in a year, it isn't a huge amount of money. Is that true?
I think that's a fair statement, and for most of the fees.
Mm-hmm.
Probably the ones we hit on the most in this packet are gonna be the monthly fees for double check valves
Mhm.
and RPs. And that is because we have don't wanna say a large number of customers, but that's the ones who are gonna be most affected by
Most
this.
impacted,
Yeah.
okay.
Fortunately, the fees aren't, a large jump like we saw in some of the other categories. But those categories where we saw the, 100% increase are pretty rare items.
Well, that was my sense. So, the headline wouldn't be, NID raises its, fees for non-Prop 218. They're sort of sneaking in, these huge fees.
Well, they'll see that one that was 400% or something. There was a couple that were really up there.
And I think it's, it's fair to have that proper explanation of what's going on. Yeah, this represents actual cost. These fees haven't gone up in 5 years.
Yeah, and we're doing our part.
And we're not getting rich off of this, right?
No, this is not a profit mechanism. This is
No.
solely a actual cost.
An actual cost.
It's a service, yeah.
And I think that's a really important point, while these aren't related to Proposition 218, these are still directly tied to cost of service.
Yes, right.
So, as Chip said, this is not a money-making endeavor.
Yeah, I didn't think it was either, but it's nice to have that public dialogue in this forum so that people can hear, no, that's not what this is. This is just covering our actual costs that haven't been touched in 5 years, so.
And I think, and I appreciate the fact that Aurora's dug through the details, got all the information. And it'll be good for us to go back in 5 years, see, has it changed? What did we experience in the last 5 years? Do our costs match up?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's just a great groundwork to which we can base everything on.
Right.
Which we didn't really have in the past. Some of the rates, we weren't even really sure how they were established. So it's good to go back and look at actual costs and base it on something firm.
Are you trying to, your original question, trying to figure out, with all of these changes and increases and decreases per action, per section here, overall, how many times these occur in the district? How many times there's a new meter install? How many times? And
Well, I don't
what
want
the-
to create a lot of
right,
extra
interest.
work for
Right.
staff. I don't.
Because I think Chip's right, I mean, looking at how many times there's a new meter install, we can always, think about calculating that out. Okay, that's gonna be X number of new and additional dollars to the district.
Well, here's an example for you. So I think our average is somewhere around 80 meters a year that we're installing, that are brand new customers. Okay, that's how many people would pay that fee. Our double check valves, we have somewhere around 2,000.
Wow,
So
okay.
there's an analysis of, okay, it's very light on the meter install fees, but there are a lot more customers who experience the double check valve.
Okay, well, that's kind of that's useful information.
And double check valves are required when you have both raw water and treated water on your parcel?
That's correct. Yeah, you have some other alternate source of supply.
Yes.
Or you have chemicals inside it.
And the explanation, as we go out and bring this back to the world, is, look, this is a very in-depth review of what
Yes.
it costs. This is transparent as it gets, right? I mean, we're
That's
talking
right.
about how much a backhoe costs and how much
Mhm.
bucket of
I mean,
rock is
Aurora,
gonna
you just
cost.
did a wonderful
Yeah.
job. And I think it was necessary. Great job, and I'm really happy to
Yeah.
see that you guys did it.
Yeah.
And in the next round,
Totally.
one of the things that might be helpful, we did this a while back, but a piece of information that I could add is when each schedule, where we were able to determine when the last review happened. So we know that on the meter installations, it was about 5 years ago. Some schedules we weren't able to find. It's just been increased by CPI for an undetermined amount of
For
time.
decades or
Yeah.
whatever. Uh-huh.
And so we could add that information to the next staff report so that the board can see, and the committee can see when the last two reviews happened. And I think that puts some of the increases into context.
I think that's a good idea, if, to the extent you can do it and not spend, you know, the next 3 weeks of your life pulling up that information. I don't know, what do you think, Chris?
Good idea. Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. Questions?
I've asked mine all the way along, so I'm good.
Good, I like.
Public comment?
So we can open it up for public comment then, at this point in time?
There's no outside public attendance.
Really?
Record is, viewing, but the rest looks like, staff.
Huh.
And that works for no one to watch.
You know, ask the questions, okay? I guess they're public.
Go alone. Yeah.
Nobody's raising their hand,
Okay, well, apparently not too hot a topic for watching on.
We'll save those for later, right?
Yeah, you must have had a question that you wanted
Aurora,
to
take it
save for the
personal.
end.
Later.
Fine, I'm fine with it.
Oh, okay. Oh, okay.
Well, with that, that's all we have for you today. We will be back.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Chip. Thank you, Aurora.
Thank you, Aurora.
Yes.
All right.
Very good.
Did we decide on the next vote?
It's Jennifer's saying goodbye. Hope
Bye,
you're feeling
everyone.
better.
Great job, Aurora.
Thank you.